Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
No. Please, the Omega begged with a trembling voice, being pressed against the wall by the tall Alpha. Stop acting up. You want me? The Alpha said in a hoarse voice. No, I don't. But the girl was immediately shut up with a powerful kiss. The kiss was so passionate and yet so rough that the brunette immediately went limp. Her legs weakened, and her body began to slowly slide down the wall. But the Alpha's arm quickly wrapped around her slender waist and pulled her even tighter. This Alpha's name was Sasuke Uchiha. He was arguably the most coveted Alpha in this school, not only because he had gorgeous dark hair and brilliant white skin, but also because he was the richest and most influential. However, this is still unofficial. Like all rich kids, he attends the best school in the country, Konoha High School. There, students are divided into two types, masters and servants. Masters learn to run large corporations, mastering the intricacies of economics, while servants keep an eye on them, preventing them from making rash decisions. Graduating from this school opens all the doors of this world. In Sasuke's case, those doors have been open to him since birth, as his guardian is the headmaster of this very school. Many students believe this is precisely why he allows himself to do whatever he wants. Having become so overconfident, Uchiha completely abandoned his studies and took up Omega. No matter who they were or what they looked like, the Alpha fucked them all without exception. If you're an Omega and think he won't notice you, you're sorely mistaken. The brunette bent even the most recalcitrant ones and made them his own. Sometimes, raped Omegas committed suicide, but the matter was always hushed up quietly, so that a mosquito wouldn't get a chance to see it. Very soon, Sasuke would have been able to fully become the owner of the entire legacy of his late parents, if not for one incident that forced him to become an Omega hunter. Flashback. Sasuke-kun! A hissing voice called out to the young man in a feigned affectionate tone. What do you want, Orochimaru? The brunette growled, not taking his eyes off the computer. You turned 14 today. Plus, we recently learned you're an Alpha. Don't you think it's worth celebrating? I don't really consider these holidays. Birthdays are no different from any other day, and I've known I'm an Alpha since birth. It couldn't have been any other way, Sasuke muttered, continuing to type something on the keyboard. And yet, you are already old enough for... The guardian took out a small bottle of expensive cognac. Hey, did you know that you can't drink before you're 18? Oh, come on. At your age, guys do worse things. Or are you afraid of ending up in the hospital from one sip? The long-haired man chuckled sarcastically. Come on, say that again. The guy hissed angrily, taking the headphones off his neck. Eventually, they went to the kitchen and started drinking. Orochimaru poured drinks, and Sasuke drank. When the teenager was completely drunk, the snake smiled contentedly and tossed the empty bottle aside. Sasuke, do you mind making a bet? Paria. Yeah. I'm offering you this deal. If you screw all the Omegas before you graduate, I'll let you meet Itachi. Itachi? Uchiha sobered up a little, hearing the familiar name. But? If you can't, you'll lose, and as the main heir to the Mangekyo Corporation, you'll hand over the entire inheritance to me. Sasuke thought for a moment, then simply waved his hand and said, Oh, to hell with you. I agree. Hee. I had no doubt. Then sign this. The guardian handed the drunken Alpha a piece of paper and a pen. Without even reading it, the drunk simply signed the document and slumped down on the table, snoring. Carefully folding the important document into a roll, Orochimaru gave the boy a sly look and went to hide it in a safe place. Naturally, Sasuke kicked up a fuss about this, as he was incapable of anything more. The deal was done. All the brunette could do was grit his teeth and go fulfill the terms of the agreement. End flashback. Sasuke sighed with relief and looked down, buttoning his pants. The Omega, now raped, lay beneath him, shuddering slightly with sobs. Thick sperm was leaking from her hole. Snorting in disgust, the brunette simply turned around. "You're not even going to help her get dressed?" a voice asked from the side. Alpha turned toward the sound. Behind him stood a short, blond man with blue eyes and dark skin. He was wearing a black suit, like a butler. The blonde looked reproachfully at Sasuke, but Sasuke openly ignored all the lightning bolts he hurled at him. "Aw, it's you, Naruto," the brunette said indifferently. That's right. The guy's name was Naruto Uzumaki, and he was this rich kid's servant. Luckily, he was a beta, so he wasn't the maniac's target. Of all the servants, he was the only one unlucky with his master. Betas always try to reason with their masters, but he never had much success. This isn't surprising, since to the Alpha, his servant was nothing more than a nobody. Well, no. Not really. More like an obedient dog that would unquestioningly fulfill his every whim, including covering his tracks. Of course, Sasuke didn't deny the fact that the beta was very attractive, but betas had never interested him. The brunette had decided for himself that he would only ever marry an Omega, but that would only happen after he won the bet with Auric. "Since you're here, take it away. I don't need it anymore. And quickly, before anyone comes here." The blonde glared at the gentleman, but couldn't object. As he'd been taught since childhood, the boy placed his hand on his heart and bowed his head slightly. "As you say, sir." With a soft chuckle, the Alpha shoved his hands into his pocket and went on his way. Naruto leaned toward the girl and looked at her sadly. Lifting her slightly, he pulled her underwear over her and wrapped her in his jacket. Easily scooping her trembling body up in his arms, he carried her toward the infirmary. There was no one in the office, so the blond man simply walked in and laid her down on the bed. The girl weakly opened her eyes and looked at the blue-eyed man. "Naruto-kun, he's had his eye on you for a long time. I told you to be careful." "Sorry. I let my guard down. How are you? I'd be lying if I said everything was fine." "I'm sorry. The Omega squeezed his hand. "Don't blame yourself. Take better care of yourself. Sooner or later he'll find out." "It's probably too late. Someone like him would never suspect that his beta servant is actually an Omega." The blonde smiled wearily and squeezed her hand in return. Many years ago, a hot summer day, little Sasuke, who had just turned 7 today, was walking along the alley with his older brother and parents. His father had draped the birthday boy over his neck. The little boy looked around with admiring eyes and smiled cheerfully. The world suddenly seemed vast and wide to him. His parents took him to an unknown place, saying they had a surprise in store for him. The boy loved surprises and spent the entire journey trying to guess what it could be. However, none of his guesses came close to what he saw. A boy his age was playing in a vast, flowering meadow, holding a small red ball. The child had bright golden hair and sky-blue eyes. The stripes on his cheeks slightly puzzled the little Uchiha. Sasuke thought he was looking at some kind of beast in human form. The blond boy tripped over a rock and dropped the red ball. It rolled right to the brunette's feet, and he picked it up with interest. The blue-eyed boy hesitated slightly when he saw his ball being picked up by an unfamiliar boy. Without showing a single drop of emotion, Sasuke approached the blond boy and handed him the ball. "Here." The boy took the ball hesitantly. "Thank you. I am Uchiha Sasuke. And you?" Sasuke was jolted out of his sweet slumber by an unpleasant shaking. Wincing slightly, he managed to open his heavy eyelids. His servant's disgruntled face immediately appeared before him. Apparently, it had taken him a long time to wake him. It's you," Sasuke mumbled and closed his eyes again. Naruto frowned in displeasure and abruptly pulled the warm blanket off the brunette. "What are you?" "Sasuke-sama, it's time to get up. Breakfast is already on the table." Ignoring his master's displeasure, Uzumaki turned to the door and walked out into the hallway, blanket in hand. "Damn beta," Uchiha hissed. Despite his displeasure, Sasuke still came down for breakfast. Admittedly, he was still wearing his pajama pants. "Sir, was it difficult for you to get dressed?" "Why should I bother if you will dress me?" The head chuckled, sitting down at the table. Naruto pretended not to care and continued eating breakfast. Afterward, he went to get the brunette's things and returned. Right there in the dining room, the blonde had to dress his master. The Uchiha watched with a smirk, but such provocations had long since lost their effect on the servant. He had already gotten used to dressing the Uchiha after breakfast. But this day was somehow different. Sasuke was surprisingly happy, and it was hardly because some beta was dressing him. "Hey, servant, do you know what day it was yesterday?" "No, sir," the blonde said indifferently, buttoning his shirt. Yesterday I fucked the last Omega at school, and there's still a month and a half left until school ends. I can't wait to see that snake's face when I tell him this." Uzumaki's hand trembled slightly, and his face became noticeably sadder. "Aren't you happy for me?" "What are you saying?" "Of course I'm glad, sir." Sasuke chuckled discontentedly. "We have to get to school, Sasuke-sama." The boys' school was divided into two buildings. The first building was for the gentlemen. Naturally, it was decorated for the highest ranks. Those who studied there wore a pure white suit and a special badge with a strange spiral, the symbol of Konoha, PA, like the symbol on the Konoha bandana. The second building wasn't as luxurious as the first, but it was certainly better than most ordinary schools. Servants studied there too. They wore unusual uniforms, more reminiscent of butlers. Like the masters, they also had spiral badges, but slightly different ones. These spirals were crossed out with a red line. This was a sign that even here they were no more than servants. Even here, they had no special rights. Arriving at school, Sasuke and Naruto immediately went to their respective buildings. However, instead of going to class, Uchiha went straight to the principal. All the Omegas cowered at the sight of him and tried not to look at him. They knew he wouldn't bother them again, but not everyone's memories of the past were vivid. He took more than half the Omegas by force. The others surrendered themselves to him willingly, knowing they couldn't escape. Ignoring the frightened rabbits, Sasuke calmly walked to the guardian's office and knocked on the door. "Come in." Having received permission, Sasuke went inside. "Oh, Sasuke-kun, did you want something?" "Yes, I did. I wanted to tell you to pack your things and get out of my house." "I wonder why." Orochimaru put down his pen and clasped his hands. "Because I won the bet. Every Omega in this school is marked by me. You can ask anyone, and they'll complain right away. And if you don't believe me, you can use a medical examination to find traces of my sperm in them." "I see. Judging by your voice, you're not lying." "Humph. However," Sasuke frowned sharply, "you forgot one small detail." "Stop it. Your tricks don't work on me. Accept defeat with honor, although I doubt you have any." "This isn't a trick. I'm telling the truth. You miscalculated a bit, Sasuke-kun." "And where did I miscalculate?" Uchiha asked, sitting down opposite the director. "You took notes, like I asked you to, didn't you?" "Of course." Sasuke handed his guardian a small notebook. Opening the notebook, the long-haired man found the title of the first page. The first was labeled Leaders. Following that were class numbers and letters, followed by the names of all the Omegas. He checked off the ones he'd managed to catch. The same was true for the servants' page. Orochimaru opened the archive with all the students and carefully checked them all. Reaching the list of servants, the snake grinned predatorily. "As I thought. You miscalculated." "What?" "Yes, that one. You missed one." "Come on, show me!" The Alpha tried to snatch the archive, but the Guardian pulled it away just in time. "No. It won't be interesting if you find out his name." Then you're just lying. I checked all the Omegas thoroughly." It can't be that I missed anyone. Those who weren't hiding it, perhaps, but that doesn't mean you checked everyone. Say, you could have guessed that someone was pretending to be a beta or an alpha. Impossible. An omega can't pretend to be a beta, much less an alpha. They're small, weak creatures that give themselves away the first time they go into heat. How naive you are, Sasuke-kun. These days, even omegas can compete with alphas. Apparently, you're still not quite mature enough. The director sighed resignedly. To save you time, I can give you a hint. He's studying in the servants' quarters. I can't say more, sorry. All that remains is to wish you luck, because you have 6 weeks to examine all 300 students, and their masters are unlikely to let you do it so easily. The snake smiled affectionately. With a disgruntled click of his tongue, Sasuke left the office and slammed the door. As soon as Uchiha had gone far enough, Oric pulled out his phone and dialed the first number on the list. Naruto-kun? Yes, Sasuke just left. No, he doesn't know anything yet. You understand what you have to do, right? That's great. Just in case, I'll remind you that he can't find out the truth about you, otherwise, well, you know that yourself. Naruto returned late in the evening, as the servants' lessons lasted much longer. Opening the door, he was hit by the unpleasant smell of alcohol. The source of the smell was lounging on the sofa, nursing a glass of cognac and hiccuping occasionally. Sighing heavily, Uzumaki took a blanket that was lying nearby and covered his master with it. Naruto, the alpha mumbled drunkenly. Something unpleasant stabbed at the Omega's chest. His blue eyes involuntarily fell on the photograph on the dresser. It showed 2 little boys smiling cheerfully and hugging each other. They held a dirty ball that had once been red. Memories suddenly flooded Uzumaki. What's your name? Asked little Sasuke. I am Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto? What a funny name. The brunette chuckled. Hey, don't laugh. The blonde boy pouted. Okay. The Uchiha reassured him and extended his hand. Will we be friends? Naruto looked at his hand for a few seconds, then shook it contentedly. Yes. Actually, Fugaku began, but Mikoto quickly covered his mouth with her hand. The father looked at his wife in surprise, but she only shook her head. No need. Don't ruin their friendship. Let's wait until their time comes. As you say, the father agreed with a sigh. Naruto, Sasuke repeated. Don't worry. I'll always be by your side, even if the whole world is against you. Sasuke, Naruto said quietly. Leaning slightly toward the alpha's sleeping face, Uzumaki lightly covered his lips with his own and kissed him tenderly, ensuring he wouldn't wake. The Uchiha's expression softened slightly, and he finally fell asleep peacefully. Tearing his lips away from his lovers, Naruto looked at him sadly and recalled Orochimaru's words. Remember, someone like you will never be with Sasuke. If he finds out who you really are, I promise you will never see each other again. The next day, Sasuke couldn't go to school due to a terrible hangover, so Naruto had to go alone. The blonde felt strange without his master. As long as the Uchiha had been on a mission to screw every Omega in school, he hadn't missed a single day. He remembered going to school even with a fever of 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and now he was overcome by a simple hangover. It was almost funny. Before he could reach his building, Uzumaki noticed a strange commotion. For some reason, everyone seemed very agitated. Raising an eyebrow in surprise, the Omega went to his friend to find out the reason. Upon seeing Naruto, everyone grew even more agitated and hesitantly averted their gazes. Why are they reacting to me like this? The blonde thought. Is there something on my face? Or did I come here in my pajamas? Naruto looked himself over. Yeah, I don't think so. Hey, Kiba. A tall, brown-haired man answered the call. He had strange fawn-shaped tattoos on his cheeks. Naruto, what happened? Why is everyone so fussing? And why are they looking at me like that? Don't you know? Well, you're right in your element. And Izuka sighed hopelessly. What happened again? Naruto was starting to boil with anger. It's all because of your master. Huh? Sasuke? What is it? You should know this. Yesterday, he went to the director all happy, but came out terribly angry. Today, Oric announced that all the betas and alphas in our building should keep their eyes open. He said that from now on, Uchiha will be screwing us. Huh? That can't be. It's unnatural or something. I don't know what those two have in mind, but it certainly doesn't bode well. You should be more careful than anyone else. After all, you live with him. Naruto shuddered slightly. Of everyone standing here, only he knew the reason. Sasuke was searching for the last Omega, and thanks to the snake, he knew he was hiding among the apprentice servants, pretending to be either a beta or an alpha. But after a few seconds, the nervousness simply vanished. Remembering his master's words, and the fact that he didn't even remotely consider him an Omega, Naruto sighed with relief. I'm out of the question right away. The gentleman has long since realized I'm not an Omega, so I can be crossed off his list. Huh? Why do you have to be an Omega? The brown-haired man didn't understand. Huh? No. Uzumaki began to stutter. You know something? Kiba grabbed his friend by the shoulders and looked straight into his pure blue eyes. Are you telling me there's another Omega hiding among us, only he's pretending to be either a beta or an alpha? Damn it! Kiba, why doesn't your logical thinking work when it needs to? Okay, we need to tell everyone this. Seeing from his friend's reaction that he was right, the brown-haired man jumped up. Hey, wait! In the end, Naruto failed to stop this hyperactive boy. In less than half a day, the entire building knew about the mysterious Omega who was putting their asses at risk. By the end of the day, the blonde was terrified to look at his classmates. Their eyes blazed with passion, and their faces were contorted into terrifying grins. Unable to withstand the pressure, Naruto feigned illness and went home. As he left school, the Omega sighed heavily, dreaming of just getting home, lying down on a soft bed, and falling asleep. Let me go! Came an indignant cry. Turning at the sound, Uzumaki saw Sasuke pinning an alpha male to the wall. You wouldn't guess this guy was of the stronger sex. Short and frail. No wonder he became his master's first victim. Stop being so stubborn. That's not right. We're both alphas. If that's the case, then what are you afraid of? Or maybe you're not an alpha, but an Omega. Sasuke narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you crazy? What the hell kind of Omega am I? Master, Naruto shouted. The scrawny alpha quickly seized the opportunity and struck the brunette between the legs. While he writhed in pain, clutching his penis with his hands, the other had already disappeared into the school building. When the pain had more or less subsided, Sasuke raised an angry glare at the servant. You? What the hell are you doing here? Uchiha hissed. I study here, Sasuke-sama. Don't be smart, Uchiha said hoarsely, and somehow got to his feet. Are you really going to check all the alphas and betas here? The blonde asked, helping him up. Do I look like an idiot? I've already crossed off the list those I'm sure of, leaving only those like him. Uzumaki flinched slightly, which did not go unnoticed by Sasuke. Hey, you're afraid you're joining those Omegas. Don't worry, in all the years I've known you, I'm completely convinced of your gender. Only a complete idiot would think you're an Omega. On one hand, Naruto felt relieved, but on the other, he felt disappointed. So how should I punish you? What do you mean? The Omega was surprised. Because of you, I missed my goal, and now this day can be considered wasted. How are you going to make up for it? Naruto gave an angry look. Decide for yourself, Sasuke-sama. Hey, in that case, you'll be helping me look for the Omega. I'll give you a list of suspects, and you'll check them all. By the end of the day, you'll let me know who might be the Omega. What if none of them turn out to be even close to an Omega? In that case, you will answer harshly for this. Sasuke grabbed his servant by the lapels and slammed him into the wall. His black eyes glittered with anticipation. Naruto hesitantly looked away and tried to push the scoundrel away with his hands. Sasuke-sama, what are you? You'll pay for this unfinished task with your ass. And don't look at me like that. Yes, I said I'd only fuck Omegas, but you're the exception. For some reason, you draw me in just like Omegas do. Since you're a beta, there's nothing unnatural about it. If you don't want to lose your virginity, you're going to have to work hard. But, Naruto blushed to the tips of his ears. Something clicked in Sasuke's head, and he roughly crushed Naruto's plump lips against his. The servant squeezed his eyes shut, but didn't resist. The brunette seized this opportunity. Penetrating the blonde's mouth with his tongue, he drew him into a sweet kiss. The Uzumaki hesitantly responded, which only further aroused Sasuke. But they were not destined to savor this moment. The bell rang for recess. With a disgruntled grunt, the Uchiha broke the kiss. Humph, as always, bad timing. Okay, let's go home. I still need to give you some instructions. Sasuke glanced sideways at Naruto, expecting a furious glare, but instead, he received something completely different. The blonde blushed red and wiped his lips with the sleeve of his shirt. So, despite his personality, he's still so innocent. Damn, Uzumaki! Why are you the one making me react like this? For 2 weeks now, Naruto had been forced to help Sasuke find an Omega among the Alphas and Betas. Every morning, the boy received 3 photographs and was forced to observe the suspects all day. At the end of the school day, he would come to his master and report back to him who, in his opinion, looked most like an Omega. However, for Naruto, this seemed a near impossible task. He found it difficult to label potential Alphas and Betas as Omegas. Not to mention that he only had a day to decide. If he'd had even a week, the blonde could have found a few clues about them that would mark them as Omegas. But the Uchiha was adamant. He argued that he had too little time for such nonsense. And to discourage the servant from further objection, the brunette reminded him at every opportunity what awaited him if he failed. That's why, clenching his fists, Uzumaki had to invent silly reasons in a matter of minutes for why Alphas and Betas would become Omegas. More often than not, he chose Alphas as his victims. That way, they'd have a better chance of proving their innocence. Well, judge for yourself. Only a complete idiot with a complete lack of sense of smell could mistake an Alpha for an Omega. That's exactly what happened. Every evening, Sasuke returned disgruntled and angry, which only confirmed his failure. Uzumaki himself would only sigh with relief and think to himself, "Only 3 weeks left. Come on, Uzumaki! You can hold out." As usual, before bed, Naruto helped his master take a hot bath and made him a fresh bed. However, this time was a little different. Recently, Naruto had begun to notice the intense gaze of those onyx eyes, which shamelessly burned a hole into him. The thought had already begun to creep into his mind that he'd been discovered. But then came the question, why isn't he trying to attack him? And then came the answer. The Uchiha never noticed the obvious things right under his nose, so there's no need to worry. But the troubles weren't over yet. For 2 days now, Naruto had been feeling a strange attraction to Alphas and an unpleasant pain in his lower abdomen, as if someone were tugging at his gut. The Omega knew exactly what these symptoms were. They were the first signs of heat. "This is just what I need," the blonde cursed quietly. Luckily, he had special pills for this. Orochimaru himself had given them to him. But they weren't perfect. They only relieved the pain and his natural attraction to the stronger sex. The scent dulled a bit, but didn't disappear completely. So Naruto had to come up with an excuse, claiming he was in a relationship with an Omega and that her scent simply lingered on him. And everyone believed him. Many thought Hinata Hyuga was his mate, and she herself had willingly agreed to play along. Everything was going perfectly, and so Naruto went to bed with peace of mind, completely unaware of what awaited him the next day. The next day started strangely from the start. Firstly, Sasuke woke up before Naruto, which was a sign of trouble, and secondly, there was the task he gave him. Here you go, here are the next suspects. When Naruto took the photos of these people, he couldn't contain his indignation. They were his best friends, Kiba, Neji, and Gaara. After briefly looking at the photos, the blonde looked up at his master, puzzled. What? Don't tell me you can't complete this mission just because you're friends, Sasuke said, not hiding his smile. But sir, I've known them all my life, and I can say with certainty that they can't be Omegas. Not one of them. Please, give me someone else. I can't act so rashly. What if they're just so good at hiding their true nature, and you, fool, believe them completely? Just pick one and be done with it. You used to do it so easily, so what's the problem now? But I really don't. Or do you want me to bend you over? Uchiha suddenly interrupted, narrowing his eyes angrily. Naruto suddenly fell silent, and his eyes widened in fear. You better decide quickly who's going on a date with me today, otherwise that someone will be you, the brunette warned and walked towards the front door. The whole day seemed like pure hell to Uzumaki. The lessons, as luck would have it, went by too quickly, which only made him more nervous. Naruto decided to pick the one who annoyed him the most, but that was a problem, too. It was as if they'd agreed to be very kind to him. His nervous look didn't go unnoticed, and the boys tried everything to find out the reason. By the end of the day, the Omega began to recall all the funniest and brightest moments the four of them had experienced, and this only made it more difficult for him to set one of his friends up. And then the bell rang for the last lesson. Naruto sighed in resignation, having already decided which of his friends he would betray. Naruto, why have you been acting strange all day? Does your stomach hurt? Kiba asked him. Not really. Maybe you didn't finish your ramen? Neji chuckled. I ate 1 cup more than usual. Then maybe it's because of Sasuke? Gaara suggested, causing Uzumaki to shudder. Oops. Look, right on target. And what did our Lovelace do this time? Did he really get on your nerves with this search for the Omega? Well, you could say that. Then you can relax. You're in no danger. And if anything happens, we're always here. Neji reassured his friend, placing a hand on his shoulder. Thanks, guys, Naruto said with a tired smile. Well, I'll be going then. See you soon. Having said this, the blonde hurried away from his friends. They could only watch him go with puzzled looks. Hey! Kiba broke the silence. Don't you think that sounded weird? Yeah, Yuga agreed. Like we won't see him anytime soon. Arriving home, Naruto leisurely took off his shoes and walked at the same pace to the living room, where his master was waiting. Hearing quiet footsteps, the brunette put down his book and looked at the servant with interest. So what? Who's going on a date with me today? Naruto clenched his fists and hesitated slightly. After a couple of minutes, he looked up at the Uchiha with a determined gaze, devoid of any doubt or fear. I can't call any of them Omegas. They are all who they say they are. Do you understand what this means, Naruto? Sasuke asked him. Do what you think is right, the blonde said so clearly. For some reason, Sasuke looked pleased. He rose from the comfortable leather sofa and walked over to his servant. He gently cupped his chin with 2 fingers and lifted his head up, forcing him to look straight into his eyes. In that case, go take a shower. Tonight promises to be hot. Yes, sir, Naruto said more quietly and looked away. As ordered, Uzumaki immediately went to the shower. There, he turned on the cool water to clear his head and calm down. Something in his chest was uncomfortably tight. It felt like 1,000 needles were piercing him. And all because of Sasuke. It was incredibly painful and bitter at the thought of being fucked by the man he loved, who felt nothing for him. He would simply become another of his toys, merely satisfying his sexual needs. But he was also terrified that Sasuke might discover his nature. What would he say then? Yell at him, rape him with extreme cruelty, and then announce to everyone tomorrow that he was an Omega? Knowing the Uchiha, Such a scenario was quite obvious. In that case, Orochimaru would lose the bet, and Naruto's life would be over. A soft knock sounded at the door, signaling bath time was over. Turning off the tap, Naruto stepped out of the bathtub, donned a white robe, and walked straight to his destiny. This destiny was waiting for him in the vast bedroom on a large bed. Seeing the blond man with his wet hair, she merely chuckled softly and beckoned him over. Still with the same sad look, the Omega walked forward toward his master. "Well, Naruto, the moment has come." Uzumaki didn't respond to this. "But before we begin, answer me one question." "Which?" Sasuke suddenly grabbed the blonde by the arm and pushed him onto the bed, hovering over him. Naruto looked at the brunette, confused, not understanding what he wanted. "Are you really a beta?" Naruto was prepared for anything, but certainly not for such a direct question. His face contorted into a look of fear and horror. This reaction was better than any answer for the Uchiha. "Ha, I thought so." While Naruto was checking out the suspects from his core, Sasuke decided to waste no time and keep an eye on the rest of his list. He quickly crossed off most of them, and only a few remained under his observation. He always arrived home before the blonde, as school rules required servants to be smarter than their masters. After sunset, the Uchiha would leave the house and go straight to his victim. At midnight, or even early morning. His mood, to put it mildly, was not very good. And no wonder, since all his dates had been disastrous. Moreover, Sasuke began to wonder why all his victims ended up being alphas. Why not betas, since they were the ones to suspect first? The boy was beginning to suspect something, but Naruto didn't show his concern. Instead, he decided to conduct an experiment. To start, he gave Naruto 2 suspected betas and 1 alpha, whose identity he was certain of. Everything went as usual. Naruto said that the alpha was the more likely suspect. Barely suppressing a laugh, Sasuke pretended to believe him. As usual, he went to pretend to meet the victim, but in reality, he went to a club to relax and clear his head with alcohol. While drinking another whiskey, the brunette began to ponder Uzumaki's strange behavior. Why did he always palm off alphas on him? Why would he do this? Maybe he knew the real Omega and was covering for him. Then why hadn't Sasuke noticed? Still unable to come to a definitive answer, Uchiha got drunk and returned home in the early morning. Naruto was already waiting for him with a glass of pickled juice and a hot breakfast. His head still wasn't working. His mind was racing with only one question. Why doesn't his servant want to help him and is covering for some Omega? "Sasuke-sama, did something happen?" the boy asked, approaching his master. "Huh?" The brunette only now noticed that he'd been staring at the servant this whole time. "No, I'm just not sober yet." The guy groaned and wiped his face with his hands, as if washing his face. "Maybe you shouldn't go to school today?" "No, I'll go, but first I'll give you another task." The alpha pulled 3 pre-prepared photos from his pocket and handed them to the blonde. Naruto looked sadly at the brunette, then at the photos. "I'll be late for my first lesson, so go without me." Without saying anything in response, Naruto quietly got up from his chair and went to get dressed for school. After drinking soda and taking headache pills, the alpha soon went to school. He had no intention of going to class. What's the point of wasting his time there when he could use it to his advantage? Specifically, spying on alphas. In this case, his victims were, as he called them, 2 acrobat brothers. They were, in fact, brothers. The younger one was named Suigetsu, and the older one, Mangetsu. The surveillance led him to the restroom, where he locked himself in a stall to avoid being spotted. The boys chatted about nothing at first, but then their conversation strangely shifted to discussing Naruto. "Hey, Suigetsu, what do you think about Uzumaki?" "Uzumaki?" The younger one didn't understand right away. "Well, he's a servant of that weirdo Uchiha, who's now looking for an Omega among the alphas and betas," the elder explained. "Oh, you mean that ghoul? Well, he's got a cool face, It's just a shame he's a beta. Hell, I'm not sure, Mangitsu said mysteriously. That is? I've been watching him for a while now, and I've noticed something odd. He always smells faintly of Omega at the same time. Maybe he's just having fun with his mate. Well, that Omega from the main building. I don't think so. I checked everything thoroughly and found a lot of interesting things. First of all, Hugo was in heat a month ago and waited it out at home. Naruto wasn't anywhere near her during that time. Her father wouldn't have allowed him to do anything to his sweet daughter. Well, maybe he has someone else. It doesn't necessarily have to be this girl. With whom? He spends all his time with his buddies, and they're definitely alphas and one beta. And Uchiha wouldn't let him have a personal life that easily. He couldn't survive a day without a nanny. That's right. The brothers burst out laughing, and Sasuke could barely restrain himself from jumping out and punching them in the face. So that's what I'm getting at, Mangitsu continued. I think this Naruto is the Omega everyone's been looking for, and the faint scent remains because his pills aren't good enough. Besides, he has the right looks and build. Nice, neat features, and a barely toned body. I know he works out and does karate. Although it's strange, he hasn't turned into a muscle-bound man yet, Tsuijetsu said thoughtfully. Exactly, it's strange. Even though he's a beta, his development is too slow. And why is that? That's right. Because he's an Omega. There's no other answer. Then Uchiha really is a complete idiot. He lived with an Omega all this time and didn't realize it. Ha ha ha. He's freaking me out. Ha ha. Oh, I can't. The younger boy burst into hysterics. Ding dong, the bell rang for class. Damn, the bell rings. Well, shall we take a walk? I wasn't going to listen to this hag's lectures. Let's go. The boys left the restroom, still giggling. It seemed like Sasuke should have emerged from his hiding place right then and there and rushed after his victims, but his legs wouldn't obey him. His head was spinning, and his brain was trying to process and simultaneously reject the incoming information. This simply couldn't be true. Naruto is an Omega? That's pure nonsense. Somehow, the guy returned home and laid down in his bed. His head was splitting from so much thinking. His eyes quickly grew heavy, and the brunette fell into a deep sleep. He was soon awakened by his servant, who had just returned from school. Sasuke didn't know how long he'd been asleep, but judging by the darkness outside, it had been quite a while. Sasuke-sama, this is someone who might be an Omega. Naruto handed him a photo of the Alpha, but Sasuke didn't even glance at it. Instead, he looked seriously at the servant, as if trying to peer into his soul and discover the truth. And why exactly can he be an Omega? What? Naruto was very surprised, because he had never known the reason for his decision before. Well, the blonde quickly looked down at the floor. Alpha sniffed lightly, and noticed a faint scent of Omega essence emanating from his servant's body. Naruto! The guy shuddered slightly upon hearing his name. Do you have an Omega? Huh? Well, no, the blonde answered suspiciously. It's all clear, the brunette said quietly, after which he got out of bed and left the room. Naruto remained sitting on the floor, not understanding what just happened. The next day, Uchiha decided to set the record straight once and for all. But beating the servant for information so quickly would have been too easy and boring. No, the Alpha wanted a little fun. For starters, he gave him a photo of his best friends. Uzumaki's reaction amused him a little. That shocked face tinged with indignation. His sadistic soul was pleased. The boy tried his best to convince his master that his friends couldn't be Omegas, but he wouldn't listen. He knew this perfectly well, and had given them exactly that as today's assignment. When he grew tired of the yelling, he angrily reminded him of the punishment, forcing the boy to shut up. Sasuke attended class for the first time in 3 weeks and stayed until the very end. For some reason, he was completely certain there was no need to worry. At home, he was even more relaxed. He watched TV, spent time on VK, and read his favorite book. Soon, his servant returned home. "So what? Who's going on a date with me today?" The servant raised his determined gaze almost without hesitation. "I can't call any of them Omegas. They're all who they are." The Alpha smiled predatorily and placed the book on his chest. "Do you understand what this means, Naruto?" Sasuke asked him. "Do what you think is right," the blonde said loudly and clearly. Sasuke placed the book on the couch and walked up to Naruto, taking his chin in his hand. Because Naruto was shorter than him, he looked up at him. "In that case, go take a shower. Tonight promises to be hot." "Yes, sir," Naruto said more quietly and looked away. Naruto showered for about an hour. During that time, Sasuke managed to make his bed and even read 20 pages of a book, stopping for a snack. When he got tired of waiting for Naruto to mentally prepare himself, the brunette knocked lightly on the door. After being told Sasuke would be out soon, the Alpha went to his room. 10 minutes later, Naruto entered his room. His once tousled golden hair now lay obediently on his head, shimmering beautifully in the lamplight. Tiny droplets of water occasionally fell from the ends of his locks. He wore only the white robe his master had left him. Naturally, he wore nothing underneath. The servant nervously clenched his fists and hesitated to look the brunette directly. This endearing reaction greatly amused the Alpha. With each passing second, he was discovering new and interesting traits in Naruto's character. Somehow managing a friendly and peaceful expression, the Uchiha beckoned the boy over, and he obediently approached him. "Well, the moment has come. But before that, answer me one question." "Which?" With a predatory chuckle, the brunette yanked the servant's arm and pushed him onto the bed. Feeling him struggle, Sasuke quickly sat on top of him and pinned his arms to the bed. "Naruto," Uzumaki swallowed loudly. "Are you really a beta?" "Well, there you go. Now he's going to yell out that E and ask if I'm okay. And really, what was I thinking?" And then Sasuke's thought was cut off as soon as he saw his servant's face. The dark face instantly paled, becoming roughly the same shade as his skin. The blue eyes grew smaller with fear, and the mouth parted slightly in surprise. For a second, Sasuke himself was surprised, but then quickly changed the dial to the desired emotion. "Heh, that's what I thought. It's you?" Naruto's insides twisted into a single, terrifying knot. He couldn't breathe, and his consciousness slowly began to process the terrible fact. He's been exposed. The Omega knew he needed to say something right now to justify himself, but the right words just wouldn't come to mind. And the longer the blonde remained silent, the more convinced the Uchiha became of his own rightness. "I don't. What makes you think I'm an Omega?" Naruto looked away. "Well, at least because you're nervous. Your heavy breathing, your rapid pulse, and you don't know what to say. I've known you all my life, Naruto, and I know you can't lie." Sasuke chuckled slightly and moved even closer to the servant's face. "Then, since you've known me all your life, why are you only now deciding that I'm an Omega?" Uzumaki cried out decisively. "This just proves that you are an excellent actor," Uchiha said monotonously. "And the evidence? Or did you just pull all this out of nowhere?" The blue eyes literally sparkled with determination, which greatly surprised the young gentleman. "Good." The Alpha smiled slightly and took the blonde's hand, bringing it to his lips. Naruto flinched slightly and tried to pull his hand away, but it was held in a death grip. "Your reaction, for example. Look, you're as red as a tomato." Anyone would have reacted like that, even an Alpha. "Then the next argument. You barely smell of Omega, even though you don't have a mate, which is highly suspicious. You probably took some pills that dulled your scent and desires." "I just often communicate with Omegas, that's why." The blonde boy tried to justify himself, but the Alpha rudely interrupted him. "Don't lie. You don't communicate with anyone except those Alphas and Betas. Any of your classmates can confirm this." "Well, next." Sasuke reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a small bottle of white pills. Naruto caught his breath for a few seconds when he saw them. I see you recognized them. Forgive me, but I did a little rummaging through your things and found these. These are presumably your pills. At the very least, they certainly don't look like vitamins. If I send them off for testing, I'm sure the results will be confirmed. The servant's breathing quickened, as if he had asthma. And lastly, the brunette squeezed his hand tighter and placed his other hand on his chest near the heart. With every word I said, your heart began to beat faster and faster. How is this not proof of my suspicions? Sasuke-sama, this isn't... The gentleman approached the blue-eyed man's lips in an instant, but stopped abruptly to whisper, "Surrender." Taking advantage of the servant's slightly open mouth, the brunette captured his lips and immediately began a passionate kiss. One hand held the blonde's wrists firmly above his head, preventing him from resisting. But even without that, it was hard enough to resist. Sasuke was a very skilled lover and knew all his partner's weaknesses. The kiss, though insistent and commanding, still held a hint of tenderness. While Naruto melted into the kiss, his other hand slipped under his robe and caressed his flat chest. This suddenly sobered his mind, and he clenched his teeth tightly, biting down on his insolent tongue. Sasuke moaned painfully and pulled away. A salty, metallic taste appeared in both their mouths. "Young master, please stop!" Naruto cried out. Sasuke ran his fingers over the corner of his lips, wiping away traces of blood. "Humph, you dared to bite me, stupid Uzuratanki." The Uchiha turned his angry gaze from his fingers to the servant. "You won't get off so easily now." Every animal instinct within Uzumaki sounded a loud alarm. His brain screamed desperately, "Run! Save yourself!" Responding to this command, his knees thrust forward, catching him hard in the stomach. Sasuke growled in pain, but loosened his grip on his arms, which the dobe took advantage of. The servant quickly jumped off the bed and ran to the wall, pressing his entire body against it. The door was only a few meters away, but he couldn't reach it. For some reason, his legs felt weak and refused to obey their master. The gentleman himself began to tremble strangely, which only made Naruto even more frightened. Two thoughts swirled in his head: either he'd hit him hard, or he was about to get a real beating, filled with Trindits. "Humph. Ha ha ha! You really are funny, Naruto," Sasuke laughed, sitting down on the bed. "I thought you turned into a complete wimp and wouldn't even resist. So you came up with all this just to scare me and test me?" Naru said with a hint of hope. "Of course not. I'm still more than sure that you are that Omega." Naruto pressed himself even further against the wall, as if trying to blend in. "But fucking you right now wouldn't be interesting. Besides, you're in heat now, and I don't have any condoms with me. I don't need any extra babies." The Uchiha dismissed. "I told you I don't." "That's exactly why I'm proposing a game," he interrupted in his usual manner. "The rules are simple. You run, I catch you. Our field will be the entire city. Don't go beyond it. School and home are also included in this territory. As you understand, I will try to catch you and have sex with you. The only place you can hide is your room. However, despite this little game, you must not forget your duties as a servant. The deadline, until you graduate from school. By the way, you are allowed to resist my attacks. You know, hitting, biting, screaming, and all that. Apparently, I have no right to refuse," Naruto said resignedly, to which the master threw up his hands. "And what will happen after it's over? If I win, I'll get you along with the inheritance." Naruto raised an eyebrow in surprise, since, as everyone knew, he was already all his. "Like a sex toy, stupid dope. What if I?" Uzumaki could barely make his voice more even. "And what if you?" the brunette repeated, thinking seriously. "Exactly. If you can hold out until the end, I'll give you your freedom. You'll no longer be my servant, and will have the right to do whatever you want. I'll even help you find a job so you don't disappear. So what? Do you agree? Naruto paused for a moment and looked down. The thought of being free was tempting, but sex toy. Just the word made him shudder. Swallowing hard, he raised his blue eyes to the gentleman, who was smirking softly and watching his reaction with delight. The choice was limited, which meant the answer was obvious. I agree. Then I declare the game to begin, Sasuke said, lowering his feet to the floor and attempting to rise. Naruto's stupor vanished as he dashed away from the dangerous spot. Well, let's have fun, Naruto. Another week had passed since that day. Naruto still hadn't shown up for school, while Sasuke hadn't missed a single day. Everyone at the school began to suspect something and fear it all at once. The Uchiha's terrifying grin sent shivers down their spines, and the strange bites and beatings weren't exactly encouraging. The conclusion was clear. Something had happened to Naruto. The friends tried calling Uzumaki, but he didn't answer. They tried visiting him, but no one answered. The house was deathly silent, as if no one was there. However, the friends weren't about to give up and kept coming until they achieved some success. Just when hopes of seeing his friend again had all but vanished, he suddenly showed up at school. He looked awful, though. His already shaggy hair seemed even more unkempt than before, his complexion abnormally pale, and adorned with horrific bags under his eyes. Everyone's usual cheerful hello sounded somehow dull. Everyone immediately realized something had happened, and that something was named Uchiha. Naruto simply shook his head and smiled wryly at all questions. Eventually, everyone simply gave in and blamed the overly demanding master. After all, if you think about it, Uzumaki wasn't much different from his former self. He still joked and fooled around, albeit a little wearily. The bell rang for the last period, and the friends, as usual, got ready to return home together. Naruto had gotten ready a little early, and was waiting for them at the gate. 5 minutes later, Kiba, Neji, and Gaara descended into the school courtyard. Seeing the blonde lost in his thoughts, the dog handler chuckled slyly and put his index finger to his lips, signaling the others to be quiet. Then he crept quietly up to his friend and suddenly placed his hand on his shoulder, saying, "Boo! Aya!" Uzumaki screamed and grabbed the brown-haired man by the arm, after which he threw him over his shoulder. Gaara and Neji, standing behind him, gaped in surprise and froze in place. None of them, especially Kiba, had expected this from Naruto. Of course, they knew he trained in martial arts and all, but this was the first time they'd seen such a reaction. To them, the blonde had always seemed like the most harmless creature on the planet. "And here you are?" "Oh," Inuzuka moaned. "Sorry," Naruto said, catching himself and helping him get up from the ground. The others unfroze after him. "Dude, what are you doing?" "I was just kidding." "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." Naruto looked down guiltily. "You're kind of nervous today. You've been on edge all day. Are you sick by any chance?" Hyuga asked. "No, everything's fine," the boy replied with a smile. "Guys, I'm sorry, but I have to hurry. See you tomorrow," the blonde shouted as he ran off into the distance. His friends could only watch him go with surprised looks, occasionally exchanging glances. Running to his house, Naruto stopped abruptly at the threshold. His face was replaced by a serious yet wary expression. His eyes, like a pair of lasers, burned into the doorknob. Swallowing loudly, he pressed the handle and gently pushed the door open. It was quite quiet and peaceful inside. Usually Sasuke would be watching TV at this time, but not now. Taking a deep breath, Naruto gripped the strap of his bag tighter and ran forward, his heels sparkling. On his way, he encountered his first trap, a taut rope. With a smirk, Naruto easily jumped over it, thereby falling into the second trap. It was a simple piece of plastic wrap stretched directly over the first trap. As expected, Uzumaki was so focused on the rope that he didn't notice the damn thing. With the thing stuck to his face, Naruto tripped over the rope and tumbled forward. On the way, he hit the corner of a nightstand hard enough to get a bruise tomorrow. Cursing softly, the blonde hurried to remove the plastic wrap from his face, when he heard quiet footsteps overhead. "Well, welcome back, Nar, you two," Sasuke said in a velvety voice and grinned triumphantly. "Well, I hope we can continue what we started today." "Don't even dream about it," Uzumaki shouted, aiming his fist at his dignity. But Sasuke wasn't so simple. The brunette easily intercepted his arm and yanked him sharply, forcing him to rise from the floor. Anticipating his servant's next move, the Uchiha quickly pinned his hands behind his back with one hand and forced him to look straight at him. Now he was trapped in his clutches, with no chance of escape. His master's face drew ever closer, intent on kissing his inviting lips. Just when all hope of salvation was nearly lost, the Uzumaki suddenly headbutted him hard in the forehead, forcing him to bite his tongue. Hissing in pain, Sasuke loosened his grip on his arms, which the servant took advantage of. Without wasting a second, he ran to his room as fast as he could and locked the door. Finding himself, so to speak, inside the house, Naruto sighed with relief and simply sank to the floor, clutching his bag to his chest. A couple of minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. "Don't stay there too long. I'm hungry, and you better hurry." "Yes, sir." This is how they live now. Every day is like a game of cat and mouse. Survival edition. The moment a servant emerges from hiding, a cruel predator awaits, thirsting for his body. But the Omega had no intention of giving in so easily. Victory was right before his eyes. Another week and a half, and it would all be over. Only one problem remained, his heat, but even that could be resolved before today. Each pill's effect was limited to 3 days. The blonde had already taken the last pill he'd had in his pocket all this time, so as usual, he reached into his cabinet for more, but there weren't any. Panicking, he rummaged through everything until he remembered one unpleasant detail. Sasuke still had them. This is bad. The next morning, Naruto woke up earlier than usual. He quickly got himself ready, made breakfast for his master, and left a note next to him explaining why he left so early, fibbing a bit, of course. Her heat was making itself known, and sitting idly by was simply dangerous. Since Sasuke still had the pills, Naruto had no choice but to go to Orochimaru for more. Approaching the school, the blonde glanced at the clock on the very top of the building. Exactly 7 o'clock in the morning. Sasuke must be awake by now, the Omega thought, and headed towards the school. At this moment, not only Sasuke but the entire school stood up, meaning there was no one there except the principal and the security guard. Luckily, the security guard had disappeared, so he walked inside without a problem. The school corridors were so quiet, it was almost intimidating. At the very end, a double door, made of mahogany, was visible. Anyone else would have mistaken it for the entrance to the assembly hall, but he was immediately disappointed. This VIP entrance was reserved for the principal. That old codger always loved to show off, demonstrating with his every demeanor that he was a million times better than the rabble of students. It was incredibly irritating, but saying anything about it would have been fatal. Orika's wrath was like the attack of an anaconda, swallowing you whole without even blinking. Approaching the door, Uzumaki knocked softly and was soon invited in. A long-haired, dark-haired man sat at his desk, typing away at his computer with a terrifyingly satisfied smile. Upon seeing the student, the snake narrowed his eyes suspiciously, but didn't stop smiling. "Naruto-kun? What brings you here at this hour?" "I can't tell him that Sasuke figured out who I am and took my pills," Naruto thought, trying not to show his confusion. "You see, I lost my bottle of pills, and I'm in full heat. Do you have a few more?" Orochimaru moved slightly away from the table and turned to face the Omega so he could see him fully. Resting his head on his palm, the brunette sighed sadly. "Hey, you see, I wasn't planning on making you new ones yet, since I thought the ones you had would last you at least 3 heats." "Then what should I do?" Orochimaru looked at him with a searching gaze. You look a little shabby. The scent is starting to emerge, too. I'll tell you, it's very attractive. If I didn't have a partner, you'd already be on the floor. For Sasuke, who's still thrashing around with youthful hormones, you're like prey begging to be attacked. If that happens, my deal will go down the drain, and I absolutely cannot allow that, the snake drawled, feigning sweetness. Naruto's senses began to sound the alarm at that tone, all telling him it was time to get away. But there's still one way to get rid of that smell. And what kind? Uzumaki asked enthusiastically. The office doors opened, and two tall alphas walked in. Judging by their uniforms, they attended the main building, and the red armbands on their arms indicated they belonged to the student council. The first alpha had the same black hair as the principal. His skin was so pale that he resembled a walking corpse. But what particularly alarmed him was his strange, even fake smile. He and the snake were definitely not related. The second, however, looked nothing like him. He had blonde hair, slightly dark skin, and a serious gaze hidden behind a pair of round glasses. Orochimaru-sama, what do we... The bespectacled man began, but stopped when he saw Naruto. Oh, Kabuto, sigh. You're just in time. And here he is. The second way to get rid of your problem, Naruto-kun. Huh? What are you talking about? Don't pretend you don't understand. Even you're not that stupid. Look, my subordinates have already figured it all out. Naruto turned around sharply and saw two strangely grinning faces. His mind desperately tried to deny the wicked idea creeping into his head. No, Uzumaki whispered quietly. You came here early in the morning, when no one was here. Did you really think that this would turn out to be nothing for you? Orochimaru-san, I understand we have a day off today, the brunette asked. No, of course not. Just a short break. You have exactly 1 hour. Do with it whatever you want. Understood, the subordinate said in unison and smiled predatorily. The blonde didn't even have time to flinch before he was grabbed by the arms in a tenacious grip. The bespectacled man was surprisingly strong and easily pinned the Omega's arms behind his back. The other man opened the door wide, allowing them to pass unhindered into the hallway. The blonde tried to struggle, hurling a volley of curses and threats at the rapists, but in such a situation, it seemed pathetic, to say the least. The alphas led their victim into a storage room on the top floor and closed the door behind them. The bespectacled man roughly kicked Naruto to the floor and quickly sat on top of him. Let's play, kid, the blonde-haired man asked vulgarly. You bastard, let me go. I'll bite off everything you fucking have. You're... MPH. The other alpha covered the Omega's mouth with his hand. Sai, give me that rag. Our sweetie is screaming too loudly. The guard might hear, the brunette said, without further ado, reaching for the rag lying on the shelf with the cleaning supplies and roughly shoving it into the blonde's mouth. The blonde alpha meanwhile removed his tie and tied Naruto's hands above his head. This deprived him of any chance of escape. The alpha smiled triumphantly and began sniffing the Omega's scent. What a pleasant smell. It's strange that you're still a virgin. But it won't last long, the bespectacled man said, grabbing the collar of Uzumaki's shirt. In just a couple of seconds, he tore her in two, revealing her dark chest. The Omega squeaked softly in surprise. Kabuto smoothly placed his hand on his chest and gently ran it down to his ribs. Sai, look. He's got a real body. How come we didn't notice him before? Don't get carried away. I want to enjoy it too. Yes, please. I can even give you the honor of sucking him off. MPH. The blonde moaned indignantly. Don't worry. While he's working on your dick, you'll suck mine. Kabuto chuckled, unzipping his pants. Meanwhile, Sai was already unbuttoning Naruto's pants and removing his underwear. The bespectacled man was already sitting on him, his pants half lowered and his erection right next to his face. Fear and disgust mingled in a horrible mixture that made him want to puke. The blonde alpha pulled a foul-smelling rag from Naruto's mouth. Naruto